quick listen.
And we are going live, and we are live. Hello, everyone.
Hello. Welcome to a very, very special live stream this week. I'm going to try and just check that our audio is working once I've managed to.
Seeing all the
It's
ads.
working.
Okay. And we're not echoing.
And we're not echoing. Yeah. As you can see, we are joined by the wonderful Joe McNally.
How are you doing? Everybody good? Becky, you introduced me as very, very special. That reminds me of grammar school when the nuns would tell my mother that I was special, but they didn't mean it in a good way.
You know what I mean? Nice way. How dare they?
No. Joe's a special child.
Very artistic. That's what they were saying, really.
Independent, has certain authority issues.
Gosh, that could be a report card for my kids, both of them.
All rebels.
They're all a bunch of rebels and creatives. That's the thing. So we have Seth. Seth is in the chat. He has put a very enthusiastic, all caps, yeah, Joe, let's go, with lots of exclamation marks. So he's very happy to see you.
And I've passed the message, Seth.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. No, keep wearing that Vampirella hoodie, man.
That's all right. So if we've had to really get very clever and inventive on how to technically do this. So if our volumes are a little bit not on par, then my apologies. Someone did say that we were a little quieter, but I don't want to tinker with it too much, because when I listen to it on that, we will be
It's fine. Yeah. Well, as long as we're not clipping, we should be fine. Maybe raise your volume a little bit if we are quiet, and also obviously we're doing it digitally. So if there's any delay or we're talking over each other, well, that's just the way the Zoom works.
Yeah, exactly.
I could really mess with Con and Becky right now and just start looking at the camera going.
Well, its stress levels are so high.
I would be sweating straight away.
Yeah, it is tough. It's weird because they say the volume's very low, but when I listened to it on the headphones, we were super loud. So
okay, well, try your volume in YouTube. So just in case, hopefully it helps.
Yeah. Anyway, but yes, we will try talking as close to our mics as we can. The trials and tribulations of doing things remotely. There you go, folks. We hope you're all having a wonderful week so far. Joe has been over here in the UK doing some great workshops. You did something with Nick on School this week, didn't you? Or last week, was it?
Yes. Yeah, they're a wonderful outfit. Neil and Richie are tremendous. Well, they're very good photographers, but they're also tremendous sources of information. I mean, Richie knows more technique and kind of the ins and outs of Nikon technology than just about anybody I know. It's amazing.
Yeah, he is really a wealth of information. And how did the workshop itself go for you? Because I noticed that I tried to go on and see if there were any places available.
And there was nothing.
And there was nothing for me. So I'm guessing that it went quite well.
It did, yeah. Sorry, Becky. As they say in New York, you were a day late and $1 short. You know what I'm saying?
That's exactly right. Probably more than $1 short, but I did really love the look of it. So it was quite an intimate group this time, as I understand it.
It was. We took a chance, and kind of ran counter to the kind of higher population, lower price point kind of a thing. We designated it as a masterclass. We got a great location for 2 straight days. We had high tier models and hair and makeup. And so we had only 8 participants and we had 4 subjects, and we were able to rotate, and people were able to stick with things and craft ideas. And it was really in depth, I guess, is what that description comes down to. And people really, really enjoyed it. It was fun.
Excellent. Actually, we've got at least one, if not more, people in the chat who were there. Robin said the masterclass was absolutely excellent. So I guess Robin was there. He thoroughly enjoyed it. Robin's a regular of ours.
Robin's terrific. He shot some really good stuff.
Excellent. There you go, Robin. That's like live on the Grey stream. So it's official. And it did look really good. I've seen a couple of the images, but you do have some stuff to share with us today, don't you?
A bit, yeah. Whenever you like, I can share my screen or we can talk about it. Any questions, I'm up for them, and off we go.
Absolutely. I will say, just as like a kind of normal starting point, please give the stream a like. It would be tremendously appreciated. It's one of those things that people always forget to do, but it really, really helps. There's 197 people watching and 63 likes. So go ahead and give the stream a like. And also the Coffee Fund is open for all of us. Unfortunately, we can't treat you to a coffee in person today, Joe, which is very sad, but next time you're
Sorry for
around.
that. I apologize.
It's no problem. Next time you're around, we'll definitely treat you to one. We have to say thank you to Jean,
Thank you, Jean.
who's already done one right there. It's coffee's all round there. Now, I'd love to see and have you share some of the shots from
Sure.
your workshop. It would be great. We've set it up so that Joe can share his screen with you all, but do keep the questions coming, and we'll try and fit them in where we can.
And maybe put the QQQ at the front, so it just makes our life easier.
Yeah, it makes it much easier to find.
Okay, can you see that? You should be seeing my Capture One
Yep.
screen up and running here. So let me just do this. We'll start off with a slideshow, and there it is with Gray. And all right, here we go. So I shot this last week when I arrived in the UK, and poor Amber Tutton, I mean, she's very patient with me. She's a lovely, energetically beautiful model here in the UK, and she's pretty well known, actually. Let me get rid of my cursor over here. And she's almost sort of part of family. Annie and I love her, and she's worked with us now, I'd say almost like for 10 years. And so I suggested this. I said, I want to put a lampshade on your head. And she said, Joe, have you actually at this point tired of seeing my face? And I said, no, this is not disrespectful at all. It's my wacky imagination, my comic book of an imagination. Just we had this really wonderful location with all these pastels. And so we kind of drove the wardrobe in that way. And shout out to Pro Photo as well. They helped us with this workshop and supplied gear. And it was overall just a wonderful day where we were dedicated to photographing Amber. Something like this, you're kind of, this isn't finished, by the way. This is just out of camera. I haven't had a chance to even work these images. So you subdue the overall lighting, and then you spark the lighting. There's Pro Photo makes a C type of light, as C1 plus, I believe these are. There's two of them. Zip tie. Jake Newell was my assistant here in London. He's a great guy, and so he was able to. We went into the lampshade, and he had zip ties, and zip tied two C1 pluses inside the lampshade. So yeah, there you go. What are you going to do?
I think the fact that straight out of camera as well is pretty phenomenal.
Yeah,
I love the tones of it. It's really amazing. So with something like that, you would put a light inside the lampshade. Obviously, her head is not a light, so I'm assuming.
How many Pro Photo lights did you have inside the lampshade, Joe?
Two C1 pluses. And you can see it's not retouched or anything yet, because like there's a piece of the zip tie right there, you know, and that will retouch out, and yeah, so that was just a fun thing we did last week. And I was coming off of a corporate assignment in Romania, which is a country I love, and I have friends there, and it's just such a richly historically beautiful place. So, and it was a corporate assignment, so I threw a couple of those in. These are nefs out of camera too, like pretty exciting, huh? That's a great photograph. But this was the area of the factory. You have to listen to the client. So this is applied photography. You're looking at a scene like this, and they say, well, this is an area where we'd like you to emphasize handiwork, hands-on, because there was an area that a worker was installing frosted glass by hand. And so you look at this and say, oh boy, what am I going to do?
Yeah.
So you kind of look around, and that's what you come up with after the application of light, and So you take a look and say, okay, hands are important. The frosted glass is an interesting surface. So again, this needs finishing. It's, I haven't done anything with this image so far. And then, you try to give the client variety, and the graphics. And this is the style of photography annual report. You could even refer to as, you're emphasizing the graphic nature of the client's mission. So you try your best. You work extremely hard on days like this. So you give them this version, you give them a warmer version, and you give them a neutral version. So you make sure that you cover bases. That's what they expect from you. That's what they bring you in to do, I guess is the thing. So that was just last week or my last 2 weeks, on assignment, and then coming here and working with Nikon UK, working a single assignment, as I showed you with Amber, in conjunction with ProPhoto. So it was definitely been a productive couple of weeks. Always wonderful to be here in the UK and to have been in Romania. It was good to go back to Romania. I show this picture because I shot this on March 13th, 2020.
Wow.
And I had found this old factory and this old gas mask, and we did this fashion shoot. And the drumbeat of COVID was getting louder.
Yeah.
And, I had spent almost the entire year up until this point on the road. Annie and I had talked about it a lot. It was going to be a very, very big year, and we were going to strategize about how we could meet on the road because I was going to be gone so much. And then, COVID getting louder. I'd spent a month in Japan already through January and February doing pre-Olympic features. And I called up Annie and I said, well, maybe I shouldn't come home because this whole COVID thing, I mean, who knew at that point exactly, it was getting worse. And I said, I don't want to make you sick or anything, or, I feel strong. Maybe I'll stay on the road and I'll just go back to Japan. And Annie, being much smarter than I am, she said, you need to come home now. And I flew home on March 15th. And that was the last time I was on an airplane for 15 months.
Wow.
Because the world closed down. You know?
And on an average year, maybe pre-COVID, I don't know if actually in terms of travel, you've necessarily gone back to the same levels that you were in 2019 and previously, but how many countries would you kind of visit in the span of a year?
Oh, that would be all over the lot. I'm about 70 countries and counting.
Wow.
Some of that is the history that I've had with Nat Geo and Life, et cetera. This, prompted by Romania, I just kind of threw in, things, very different assignment, very different nature of the assignments that I've done there, where I've used, circus performers and models, et cetera. And this was actually, Nikon UK used this to talk about the workshop that we did last week.
Yeah.
And fashion and beauty. I mean, Romania is just a place where your imagination can kind of run wild a little bit.
Amazing.
And those wings, I brought those to Romania, and
you got those through customs.
I got them through customs, and that's good that you picked up on that, Becky, because it's hard. They're made out of natural feathers.
Wow. And
so I had to get them cleaned and then state their origin. These were actually made in Hollywood. And I've had these wings now for, I don't know, 15 years, maybe even more. Can I admit something? Can I sort of stole them by just being passive aggressive. I used them. I commissioned them for Sports Illustrated. Right. And they cost about $3,000+ way back when. And my editor kept telling me, like, yeah, I want those wings back. You got to bring those wings back in. And I said, oh yeah, I'll get to it. I'll get to it. And he's no longer there. No. And Sports Illustrated hardly even exists anymore. So I still got these wings.
It's amazing.
so, as a photographer, you can, because it's wonderful being a freelance photographer because you're essentially irrelevant to everyone's process. You're just, and so if you just kind of lay low in the weeds, they forget about you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Or
That's
and particularly in my case, because I'm eminently forgettable. It just is, it's just like, who was that? Who was that? I can't remember. Was his name Joe? Yeah, whatever,
yeah,
whatever, you
yeah.
know.
So how many shoots do you think you've used the wings for? Because this set is amazing, and that's the most recent one.
Yeah, no, I've used them for a bunch of shoots now. I used to drag them down to the Santa Fe photo workshops years
Yeah.
ago, and
Mhm.
and I have my friend Donald in these wings, and some favorite models. I return to faces. I work with a lot of people again and again because, like, for instance, Amber. She's, a lot of photographers are always after the new face, the new thing, the new this. I really like working with people I like and know and trust, and there's trust between the person in front of the lens and myself behind the lens, and we can try ideas. And there's a lot of compatibility, friendship, trust, etc., in the process of making the photographs. So
Yeah, Seth made a suggestion. He said, "When you're ready, Joe, we can throw some blood at the wings for a shot." Just saying.
oh, there
You know, Seth
is.
with his fake blood.
Yes, no, Seth has introduced me to fake blood.
Mm.
He was putting blood on a dead ballerina.
Oh yeah.
I should explain perhaps, but
Yes.
anyway,
Just to
you know,
clarify, she
and,
wasn't actually
and
dead.
If you
no, she
read
wasn't.
Joe's blog, he's got an article on that shoot particularly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Seth was looking at me and he's putting the blood on it, and he's like, Joe, this blood is very expensive. I'm like, who knew? Who knew? I mean, I'm not an SFX guy. Seth is like this super knowledgeable photographer, and he's terrific photographer, but one of his specialties is, the special effects, the zombie stuff, and all that crazy, wonderful makeup. Katrina Grieco, he works with her, who's like a genius at taking an phenomenally lovely, person and making them look like, in fact, I think I have something in here that is, if you bear with me, my I'm not going to show all these pictures, so people are like panicking right now. Oh my God, he's not going to show all everything,
Not
is
going to
he? Oh
show
my
more.
God,
There's a
oh
lot.
my God.
Although there's a really good way just to put a little plug here. There's a really good way to see a lot of Joe's work, and that's actually in his book, which I'll show you on full screen a little bit later. But if there's anything that you feel you're missing out on, then you have to read this. Apart from it being really, really brilliantly written, and that's from one writer to another, there's some incredible photography in there, and it kind of spans your whole career, really. It's a tiny cross section of all the work you've done, but I think, how long did it take you to put together those images for the book?
oh, oh, well, the book is kind of an overview of a
Mm,
career. So there's some pictures in there that I shot when I was still a student, and that would have dated back to the early 70s.
wow.
Which I'm sure will prompt a comment from Seth at this point, relating to longevity, and my current
Yeah.
lack of relevancy and all of that. But anyway, this is a dead ballerina we
Oh,
found in
wow.
a dryer in a laundromat in
As you
Seth's
do.
neighborhood.
In Seth's neighborhood.
Yeah.
That's very telling.
Seth's job.
but,
Yeah.
but there's Seth.
Yeah.
And his very beautiful Marissa Ropa in real life is very beautiful, but she's his zombie bride, and she's floating to him on their zombie wedding night. So
Wow.
yeah,
That's
you know
amazing.
you have to
You
have.
scrub up well, Seth.
Yeah. He makes a very good impression.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Was the morning look.
It was exactly. First thing in the morning. There's a couple of questions here which I think we can kind of probably tie in. As I understand, you're using exclusively Z now, pretty much for all your work,
I am.
or Z, as you prefer,
Yeah,
however you prefer to
yeah.
say it.
I really like Zed. I love saying Zed.
It's a
I love saying,
stronger way to
yeah,
say the word.
Z9. It's almost like a superhero. You could imagine like a movie or a television show, Z9 in a
Yes.
world gone mad. No, whatever,
Yeah.
Yeah, I never, anticipated saying this, but as a photographer, and I've got a fair degree of longevity doing this, there are so many things that are happening as technology evolves that I never could have imagined. I mean, a camera like the Z9 for me when I started it wasn't even science fiction. It wasn't even on the radar, something
Yeah.
like this, So I have left DSLR behind, and that's not uh, um, my making a judgment call. The D850, I think, was the best camera I ever used up until the Z9. So I had to make a strategic move and streamline because so much of Nikon technology is being devoted to new upcoming lens, a roadmap for lenses, and there's the S series lenses that are incredibly sharp, and the whole system is driving with forward with a lot of energy. So I had to make a decision, prompted, by some finances too, because I bought the new 400 TC 2.8,
Beautiful.
which is an amazing lens, and the 800 6.3,
Yeah.
So I downloaded my D850s,
Mm.
and I have nothing but Z cameras now.
Wow. Are there any sort of F mount lenses that you still favor that you use with your Zs just in combination? Because there are some gaps in that range in
Sure,
for someone so
sure.
versatile.
My 28-1.4
Yeah. Beautiful
is
lens.
such a beautiful lens, and that lens historically was an incredibly important lens to me, because in the days of shooting Kodachrome for the National Geographic, I needed something. Let's face it, Geographic doesn't need headshots; they need environmental portraiture, so a face and a place. So a 28 is a beautiful lens for a portrait where you situate someone in their shop or in their environment. And shooting Kodachrome, which is very unforgiving, 1.4 was a very valuable, extra f-stop, if you will, that extra edge of speed. And that back in the day, a manual focus, and so then updating to the newer edition of the 28-1.4, which I use routinely now on the FTZ adapter with no loss of sharpness, so that stays in my bag. I have a 19 millimeter tilt shift, which I only use occasionally, and then I have a lens I bought from Grace,
Hey.
Is that the
hey,
1000 mil reflex?
the 1,000 millimeter mirror. Yeah, I brought that to Tokyo, Becky.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
Did you manage to get because it's such a unique lens. The whole design of it and the whole concept is something else. Did you manage to shoot some stuff with it?
I did. I shot a bit with the 1,000 in Tokyo, and I used the 500 in Rio to pretty good effect.
Wow.
And you take out a 1,000 millimeter mirror in the midst of a whole bunch of photographers on the sidelines. They're like, "Holy shit, what is that?"
Yeah.
and
Yeah, exactly.
so that's a pretty unique piece of glass. And my probably the lens I value, that's an F mount lens that I will never ever get rid of, is my 200 mil f2.
Nice.
And
Yeah.
this is anecdotal. It's not scientific. I think personally, it's maybe the sharpest telephoto I've ever used. I say that with no basis in fact. It's probably just my emotions speaking.
Sometimes you have to be emotional about these things, though, particularly when it comes to lenses. Obviously, if they did another 200 at some point, and maybe you'd have the same emotional response to that one. But there is definitely something special about that 200 f2. And
Yeah.
anyone who's owned one or used one can't deny how phenomenal it performs. So
It's beautiful.
yeah, it's just
Yeah.
heavy.
It is a little bit, hey, but it's not relative to a lens I used. Again, here we go, 1984 Olympics in Los Angeles. I used the manual focus 300 millimeter f2.
Oh,
Now
wow.
that you needed to be Arnold Schwarzenegger to get it to your eye. It's like, and sharp as blazes, but oh my goodness, that was a chunky piece of glass.
Yeah.
But you see, Nick, I think, and I'm speaking rapturously about Nikon here, which is, it's probably an appropriate forum to do that. I think Nikon has always understood, as a relatively small company, that photographers do have an emotional connection to the equipment that goes beyond price point and abilities, or numbers of pixels, et cetera. And I just don't think some of the behemoth, manufacturers completely understand that. I do think that the history and the legend of Nikon is there. It's steeped in lore, in feelings and emotions. I mean, never forget, really. And he was a friend of mine. I was proud to know him, David Douglas Duncan.
Yeah.
I mean, Nikon is a global brand in many ways because of the efforts of one lone still photographer back in the 50s. And I mean, he brought, Nikon was just making glass back then, just making lenses, and he brought it to the attention. He brought it foursquare at Life magazine, which was the magazine of record at the time. And the editors were so impressed by his stuff from the Korean War. It was so sharp that they were asking the lab, which was a legendary lab, the Time Inc. lab, if Duncan was out there shooting larger format. And he wasn't. He was shooting 35. He had, but he was using Nikkor glass, and that really launched the company in so many ways.
Yeah. In fact, for anyone who hasn't seen some of our earlier live streams where we interviewed Gray, we have managed to get Gray on the stream a couple of times, and he did tell the great story about how David Douglas Duncan was introduced to Nikon lenses and everything. So do if you ever have a spare hour to trawl through our back catalogue of live streams, that's in there. But it's very much, I think, I don't know what the first lens that he used was, but there is a book that Gray has somewhere in his vast library, which has the photograph that was taken of David by one of the Nikkor guys that basically sold him on the lens. And he went, hold on a second, what was this taken with? So anyway, it's a fantastic piece of Nikon's history for sure.
So anyway, I should probably move forward from the wings to the wings. And no, I'm not going to try to be a bird photographer, but I have, this is a tribute to technology. I mean, the AF that we have nowadays, I'm showing these because we go, we're bringing a group, thankfully the workshop is completely full. We're bringing a group to Norway in February and going up into Lofoten. And I was there with Annie scouting out photographing these sea eagles with the 100-400. And I'm no bird photographer, good Lord. And that's down in Costa Rica, so that workshop is coming up. And I think about this and like, yeah, I'm not a wildlife photographer but the technology is really so astonishing that I try this stuff and I'm just I'm pretty amazed by it, so yeah, so this is the kind of thing that on our scouting trips, because we're going to be involved in these kind of natural environments, I've been shooting some of this, and I follow up with another flying wonderful, beautiful person. Just a quick discussion of the technology, because there's so much stuff out there. I'm sure you guys hear it where people go back and forth about, oh, the camera does this, but it won't do this, or it should have this, or, and I'm like, oh my God, can anyone complain about anything that we have at our disposal right now? So this is Tokyo. Now this is D6, and I'll just show you, this is where camera technology is now. So this is Yulimar Rojas, and she set the world record. This is her world record jump in the triple jump and won the gold medal. She was the first female gold medal winner in Venezuelan history. And when she won the gold this night, in Tokyo, Venezuela went crazy,
Yeah.
you know. But here's a D6 in action, you know, just she's flying,
Wow.
looking at the scoreboard, reacting, knows she has a world record. Her
Amazing.
training partner took silver. And that's what the Olympics is to me. It's pure joy.
Yeah.
It's about the joy of human endeavor and human accomplishment. And I'm just tracking that. I'm hand holding the is it the 180 to 400?
Yeah.
And I'm hand holding that, following her, you know, and it's just, you know, and then of course it comes along, and this is part of the marketing campaign on Z9. The Z9 is better. The AF is better than the D6. I mean, I was totally happy with the D6. It's a phenomenal camera, but I got my hands on the Z9 after the 21 Olympics, and it made me wish I had the Z9 for the 21 Olympics.
Wow.
You know, the speed and responsiveness of the Z9, you know, the eye tracking is ridiculous. This is, you know, lit fashion out in the desert, you know, all of this kind of stuff. And then, of course, again, this is the comic book of my imagination. I set a drag racer on fire, and as one would, you know, as one would, you know. And this is my friend Ed, who's a race car designer and driver, and he just works with me. He's a phenomenal guy, and we put pilot lights in his exhaust pipes, and then he was able to trigger a propane flow into the pilot lights, and that's the flame coming out of the side. And then we took the parachutes out of his cones in the back, and we ran blasting caps to his steering wheel so that he could pop the tops on the smoke canisters in the back, you know, stuff like that. So again, as one does.
Looks like a scene from Mad Max.
Yeah, it does.
I've seen way too many movies, Con. You know, I've seen way too many movies. And this was also this past year. This is an interesting photograph too, isn't it? But Profoto came to me and they asked me, they said, would you, we want you to use as many flashes as you possibly can. I was like, all right, you've come to the right place. And so you turn that black room into this, you know, and then you populate it with characters. I mean, these are small res because they're behind the scenes, but then I staged a whodunit, you know, kind of a thing with which was kind of the gems go missing. And my more favorite picture is the butler did it, you know, type of a thing, you know. So yeah, so that's just a quick overview of you know, things that, you know, I've done kind of lately, I guess you could say, you know, a little bit lately, you know, and I put some other stuff in here over the course of that we can talk about, you know, however you like, if there's questions, etc. You know, whatever you like, we can go any direction you'd like.
For sure. Well, I've got Champagne Sumo said waiting for a Downton Abbey themed shoot. Have you ever done something? Because you've done quite a lot of sort of almost period drama-esque, maybe not exactly historical fiction, but have you ever done any shoots like that? I mean, the Cluedo one, as I would call it, you don't call it Cluedo in the States. I think you call it, is it just called Clue? Clue,
yes, that's it. You know, yeah, it was the butler with the candelabra, you know, that type of thing, you know. So I did a little set off of the main set, and I lit a little character studio, and this is actually, he works with me as a photo assistant, you know, Charles, and I looked at Charles at one point, we were on a job, and I said, you know, I'm going to cast you in this thing, and you're going to be the movie producer. And he was like totally into it, you know. He was totally into it, you know. And there's the evil butler.
There's the butler, right?
Another assistant, probably.
Another assistant.
and Nick is a good friend. He's a character actor in New York. He's in the John Wick movies, and so he was our diplomat, who is also mildly larcenous in the photograph. And Nick always plays a tough guy. He's
Yeah.
he's always like, if Nick shows up on your door, you know, it's over for you, because you did something bad and now you have to pay for it. And there's the Grand Dame, from the scene, and then Jari Lee was she was our quote unquote movie star or movie starlet that Charles is trying to, get into his movie. And I told Charles, I said, you have to go over the top here and be completely smarmy and say, come on, sweetheart, think of back in the day, that, gonna put you in a picture, gonna make you a star, that kind of thing, you know. So that's a little bit of a character set
And what's
off
your
to the
sort
side.
of setup for something like that in terms of lighting? Do you just have one massive softbox on them?
It's actually an umbrella box. It's a sizable umbrella box, and there's a film board underneath of it, and you can see, here, you can see there's a fill board, and you don't really see the catch lights in her eyes. I wonder if up there you see a catch light. See, there's one light source up in there and a fill board underneath here.
Wow.
So yeah,
That's very cool. I had
So-
I had a question from Ron who said, do you find 45 megapixels is enough for you, or do you feel like you might need more? I don't know. I mean, we get this question almost on a weekly basis about the Z8, the fabled Z8, which doesn't exist yet, but we have a waiting list for it. That's how in demand it is. And whether or not it will have lots of resolution or whether it will be the same sensor. What's your kind of take on it?
I'm going to be really mischievous here. Yo, dude, it does exist. I've got 3 of them. You want to see them? No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
Gets in trouble for that.
Swear, yeah. Uh-oh. No.
How many megapixels does it have, Joe?
The 72,000 per square inch. I don't know. So here's the thing, and I may be a bit of a naysayer about this. I got enough pixels. I've had enough pixels for a long time. I think the pixel wars are overrated. I think that as photographers, and it is perspective, right? It is kind of, and I'm not being judgmental here about photographers who are growing up in this digital era. It's a natural need for more, and the demands are very high for photographers now. So I don't say this is a bad thing. Technology, it just gets bigger and better. Well, actually, it gets smaller and better, right? And faster and all of that sort of stuff. And so we are, I'm sure, standing on the verge of more pixels. Do I really need them? My answer would be no. I'm perfectly content. I mean, this picture is shot with a Z9, and where do you go with that? I mean, beyond here, pixels are wonderful things. It's like, oh, wait, ooh, yeah, there was one right there. It was running across the table. That was a stray pixel.
It's a stray pixel that ran away.
Oh, I got him now. Yeah, and they're all over the place. Anyway, yeah, I think the pixel wars are overrated. I think it's wonderful that the camera manufacturers are locked in kind of into this duel, which is wonderful for us as photographers because the competition amongst the camera manufacturers produces better and better technology for us. And I'm a fan of technology. I'm able to solve problems now and be quicker in terms of delivery. Some of the stuff I used to have to encounter, I had to do a lot of heavy lifting that I currently don't have to do anymore, in the sense of I've got all of this tech right inside the camera. I used to, on assignment, here's the thing, I used Nikon F2s like crazy, but the photomic heads in those cameras, the meters were not dependable. So let's face it, and they were fine for their time and day. So I took the photomic heads off of my F2s, and I had at one point I probably had, because I was shooting space shuttle launches, Olympics and stuff I probably had 8 to 10 motor-driven F2s, and I put plain prisms heads. So I took all the meters out of the cameras, and I just relied on a handheld. And then I would make judgment calls about like, okay, so it's my incident meter says this across the street. I had a spot meter too, but I'd say, okay, that's got to be down a stop. And that's, an education that you get from that time, so to have the cameras that we have now and all of that technology, histograms and blinking highlights and everything that you can regulate I haven't used a light meter in years, and I almost feel like I have to go to confession, about that, blessed be Father, for I no longer use a light meter. My son, you blaspheme,
Blasphemy.
He will never be forgiven for that.
Oh my God, you grew up with a light meter. What have you lost your traditions? Don't need them anymore.
No, sure.
How often do you think about technology in general as a working photographer who's done it for decades, went from analog to digital? When you get a camera, like how often do you think about specifications and autofocus speeds and all this? I mean, as a working photographer.
Almost never.
Exactly.
Almost never. In fact, when I was asked to give a little talk when the Z7 was introduced, was it the Z7? I think it was one of the camera introductions. And I said flat out, first of all, I said, tip of the hat to the engineers, because they had given a presentation about all the stuff that happens. And I looked at a whole bunch of photographers in the audience and Nikon ambassadors. And I said, come on, we're photographers. When we actuate that shutter button, do we actually understand or even think about all the technology chain that sets up in terms of a millisecond event that occurs inside this black box that we're holding? Do we ever think about that? I'm like, no, we don't think about it. It's like light enters a lens, hits the chip. I got a picture. Hey, I mean, that kind of thing, I mean, and I think it's good that we don't think about it over much because I think the people who think about it too much, well, let's move on.
They spend more time thinking about cameras than taking pictures.
Thank you, Joe, for this. Thank you, Joe. I really appreciate it.
And I don't want to get pejorative, but there's some folks out there who hide in the pixel woods, and there are things they are camouflaging by an over discussion of technology. I think the best nature of a photographer is to be fluid, to be anticipatory, to be reactive, to be to look at the world and be able to intuitively decide and distill important messages out of a very confusing and cacophonous world that's out there, out of a mess, a muddle. I mean, photographers get dropped into situations and they have to sort it out in a coherent series of split seconds. And those split seconds that they present as images explain the situation they're encountering to the rest of the world who is not there with them to try to understand. And that in itself is a tremendously difficult and intuitive mission. And I think if you get hung up on like, oh, wow, this lens is really fast, I think I'll point it that direction. And, anyway, I'll get down off my silly ass soapbox. And
we totally with you.
Absolutely
on
agree.
that.
Yeah.
It is also so easy, I think, in this day and age when there's basically a running conversation that never ever ends on the subject of technology, that people kind of get sucked into it quite easily. And obviously what we want at the end of the day is beautiful pictures. So let's have a look at more of yours, I'd say.
Well, I threw this in just because there's a little bit of history here. This is Leonardo Britton with Ballet Hispanico in New York underneath one of the elevated structures in the upper part of Manhattan. Shot it this past summer. And again, this is the Z9 in intuitively fast, response. In days gone by, AF systems might have been confused maybe by the white shirt or the leading hand or foot. Now I have eye technology, so I'm dropping that cursor is finding his eye, And the interesting historical path here, and I would encourage especially young photographers to get involved in, is that is my first successful dance photograph.
Wow.
And this is almost embarrassing, to admit, but I shot it in 1977. in at Lincoln Center when it was easier to just go over. She's a friend, and I had an apartment next door to Lincoln Center. And I always encourage young photographers to find something that they feel is so beautiful that they can't help but photograph it.
Mm.
And so for me, that's been ballet, that's been dance, and in many different forms. And so this humble beginning, which I shot, as I say, just for a friend, became part of my archive. Whoops, I'm messing up here. And this is, a member of the National Ballet of Cuba and in Havana, and modern dancer in Vancouver.
Wow.
And a dancer from the Bolshoi in a tenement in Russia. And you could title this picture, Bolshoi dancer in tenement. Or I could title it, "This is where I had to stay because Life magazine was so bloody cheap." But let's move on. And
this building looks like in the building that I grew up in.
Okay, all right. And this is the famous Sanduni bass, and a couple from the Bolshoi. This is in Mexico. This is in China. That's Gregory Hines in New York City. That's the Palabolas dance troupe, very famous troupe. That's the Vancouver Ballet, and that is Julie Kent and Marcelo Gomez. And this is an ad campaign. These are shot for American Ballet Theater, and about a block away from that old apartment, this is an old picture that I made, that black and white photograph in 1976. I ultimately shot the American Ballet Theater ad campaign one year.
Wow.
And my pictures were on the plaza a block away from my old apartment. And so life as a photographer really tends to be a full circle event. It's something that sticks with you, and you find yourself returning to themes. And that's why I always try my best to make sure that anyone I encounter with a camera feels like that's been a positive experience.
Yeah.
Because it's a full circle type of a thing, and you never know where you will come back to. And
Absolutely.
that's very powerful, I think. And it's a gift that we as photographers can offer to our subjects, that you are in good hands. I will take care of you. And in the aftermath, I will be the good shepherd of your photographs. And so there's a trust that you build up there, which is, pretty amazing.
Yeah, and
Beautiful.
you have this amazing recollection for names and people that you've shot, and I'm sure that, as you said, you work with sometimes the same models over and over. It can become quite a personal thing to take someone's picture, particularly if you then repeat that later on in different stages of their career or at different times of their lives, and you kind of build up lifelong friendships, I would imagine.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, as I mentioned Nick before, and people I've become friends with over time, there's historical markers that you kind of lay down or leave behind, and that people that, I'm just scrolling through here to see if anything it would prompt discussion. But, here's Jolie. She's a phenomenally talented dancer in Las Vegas. I've worked with her probably now for over 10 years. And this is done with speedlights. This is done with SB 5000s, and people think sometimes maybe that I'm always working, big sets with lots of money. This is a friend's living room in Las Vegas, that I spent a few $100 on to kind of, and there's the set just with some speed lights and a couple of diffusers and a backlight, and that's what you get. So it isn't always an overly complicated type of a situation that you're confronted with. And I work at that scale of things, but I'll also work at, let me see if I thought I saw it earlier. I might have, yeah, for instance here, let's see, full screen here. Can you see that okay? It's a little bit
Yeah.
small. It's a National Geographic tear sheet. So I came out of a school where something like this, National Geographic shipped me off to Chile. This is the Atacama Desert. And I went there with one assistant and 45 cases of equipment.
Wow.
And we shipped all of it out into the Atacama Desert. And I lit these scopes, which are the equivalent of, 10 to 15 story buildings.
Mhm.
And then I had a helicopter relayed in from the coast. And thankfully, it was a calm night in the Atacama Desert, because I'm shooting facing into this, because I have a radio that is triggering these flashes in here, and I have the radio receivers on high rollers, big stands,
Mhm.
that I project up into here, so that the radio signal is clear and clean, and the chopper is flying very low and very stable. And I'm at the door, and I think I shot this. I mean, people might debate me, but I think I shot this around a 30th of a second
Wow.
from a helicopter. And when you spend that much money of the National Geographics, they got to know what the hell you did with it.
Yeah.
You go back to the office, and there's these stodgy dudes who never actually, I don't know if they ever get out of the office. It's like, well, what have you done with my money?
Yeah.
And this kind of editorial kind of crap that you have to go through. Oh, there it is. Oh, sorry. That's what I shipped to Chile. That's what I shipped to Chile.
That's what you did with their money.
Yeah. Yeah. I had a lark, It's fun to travel with this bunch of stuff. Didn't you know that, Becky?
Yeah. Looks it.
It's actually all clothes. I have to make a statement no matter where I go.
3 wardrobe changes a day.
Absolutely. Not to mention the hair and makeup. Oh my
That's
God.
right.
Gotta be a star.
But yeah, a lot of history, and I've seen a lot of technology kind of, come and go. And
Yeah.
I'm thrilled by where we stand now photographically. It's just an amazing place to have this kind of reach, to have this kind of technology. I mean, that's what I had in Tokyo,
Yeah.
So, everything from an 800 down to a 1424.
Gosh. Ed
So,
asks if you have, well, he actually said, which is the one 5-star image in your catalog and why? But do you have a favorite image that you've taken? I mean, I think it'd be a tough
absolutely
choice.
not.
No,
Yeah,
too
absolutely
hard.
not. I couldn't even begin to pull that out. I apologize for not being more like, oh yeah, this one. No, no.
No, but
I mean,
every shoot that you do is an adventure, really, isn't it, in
it
itself?
is. And probably, truth be told, my favorite pictures are pictures nobody else cares about, because they're my personal pictures. You
Yes.
know,
So there
and
was an earlier question actually about your personal photography. Do you have a particular favorite location or anything for your own personal work, or a favorite type of shoot that you do?
well, a favorite type of shoot would be a people shoot.
Mhm.
Like I'm a very curious person, so I'm intrigued by whatever people are doing. And I like other cultures. I like to observe. I'm curious about what people do. How do they make a living? What do they believe in? What's their day like? All that sort of stuff. How does this work? All that sort of, stuff that needs to relentlessly drive a photographer forward. So, yeah, I mean, in terms of a favorite setting, I mean, a favorite city I'm in right now, London.
Yeah.
Absolutely adore London, and tend to come here every year. So with Annie, because it's a favorite for both of ours. So there's not really uh, uh, being a generalist. I mean, maybe you can see from this grid of pictures, it's all over the lot.
Yeah.
It's like it's crazy. There's sports, and there's portraits, and there's this and that, and science and technology, and uh, wheels of cheese. It's
And cars and planes and automobiles, the whole, yeah, there is a real huge mix, but those are actually wheels of cheese, aren't they?
That's a lot of cheese.
That's a lot of cheese
that's a
right there.
lot of cheese. That was shot for a book called The Day in the Life of Italy
Oh,
back in the day. And so, and this wasn't even on my assignment list to try to capture on that day, but I thought I'm being assigned to Parma Italy. Well, it's doesn't take a genius to realize that's where they make Parmesan cheese.
Yeah.
Like, where do they keep a lot of this cheese? I mean, this isn't rocket science. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? So, you've got, you have to go after things because you're curious about it. I mean, this picture here, Shawn Johnson, at the time, she was America's best gymnast and the balance beam. This was prior to, I think, the Beijing Olympics or maybe it might have been Sydney. I can't remember, but she's from Iowa, so what do they do in Iowa? They grow corn.
They do.
So you put the balance beam in the cornfield. It's hard to do physically because balance beam is very heavy, and that corn is like 8 feet tall. So we had to put the balance beam on apple boxes and then sandbag the hell out of this thing. Yeah. And there's people, there's 2 assistants, her father are underneath that balance beam, and they're hanging literally on ropes to add extra weight so it stayed stable because there's a storm coming in. And I got called out this years ago. I got called out. It used to be a site, maybe it's still around, called Photoshop Disasters. And Sports Illustrated, in their infinite wisdom, were moving very fast. So, weekly magazine, they grabbed a frame out of my take that had a hand. It was her father's hand right down in here. See, I had to cut all the corn down around in here to get that balance beam in there. And then I had a bunch of A-clamps. I took the corn that I cut and I A-clamped it back up onto the other stalks so it would bring it back up. And then I hid, the personnel down in the cornfield. And at one point, I'm moving fast. I shot a picture and you can see a hand here. And then Sports Illustrated, whoever was running the website, didn't look closely enough and they published it. And then I ended up on a site called photoshopsdisaster.com. And it was called The Creepy Hand in the Cornfield Shot, which I actually was very proud of.
Yeah.
I thought it was fantastic. It's her father's hand, so,
kind of fun to have it as part of the image.
I tell you, there's always people in the wings that are like, oh, excuse me, but I see a dead pixel in the lower aspect. And I was just wondering what's your point of view on that? And like, my point of view is that I don't care. That's because at a certain point you have to fish or cut bait. You've got to let go. You've got to go after a photograph. There's flaws in all my pictures. I've got equipment in the background. Oh God Almighty, I am a one-person mistake machine. And I feel like these guys, the ice fishermen, it's just, they weren't that cold. I was freezing my ass off and these guys were all drunk. So they didn't care.
They were happy.
But you have history. You just do build up history. There's the New York City subway system back in the 70s, man. Talk about the bad old days.
I hear it still looks the same.
No, it doesn't. Stop that. Stop that. I'm going to come down to the shop and have an issue with you, Becky.
I need to go over actually and experience it in person.
Seth is on the way as well.
Yeah, exactly. Come beat me up. Do you still shoot any film?
No. I haven't shot film in a long time. Here's I was just going to zero in on this. Let me see if I can see that.
Yeah.
That's Kodachrome 200 in pre-dawn light in Kenya. Wow. You see the grain, you see the reticulation.
Beautiful.
And that is like, it becomes almost a painting. You push Kodachrome 200 back in the day to 400 and it was great film, but it would start to explode. Now, by contrast, let's see here. That's Usain Bolt in Rio at ISO 4000.
Wow.
So who's complaining?
Yeah,
exactly.
Is there anybody out there complaining?
There are, but they shouldn't.
They do.
And also this is autofocus at 2.8, 400 millimeter lens on a monopod, and I'm tracking him, and I'm dropping. This is a D5, in Rio, and I am tracking him around the corner. It was a bad position. Here's where sometimes the luck of the draw just works out. Is also, I have to admit, a certain aspect of or portion of laziness. As I had drifted down, I didn't want to go all the way down to the finish because there was like 1,000 photographers down there. And I was like, I don't want to fight through that crowd. So I drifted up. He was right. This is a gold medal run, 200 meters. And so the 200 meters starts around the track. And so at this point in time, it's his first turn. So he's really working hard. This picture ran 2-page spread in Sports Illustrated. The thing about Bolt is he was so good. By the time he got to the finish line of a lot of his races, he was at half speed. There was a famous picture of him from Rio where he's actually laughing as he crosses the finish line because he's beating everybody else by such an extensive margin. But here, at this point in the race, it's probably a third of the way into the 200. He's pushing it. Look at him. Look at the musculature.
Yeah.
Look at the determination. Look at the breath. I mean, man, he's like a super fast locomotive coming around that corner.
Yeah.
And the camera grabs him and stays with it. That, to me, at ISO 4000. I mean, seriously,
Yeah.
you know.
No one can talk about the technology from the last few years. When you put it in that perspective, it's really phenomenal.
We are truly spoiled.
We are
aren't
very
we? Yeah.
spoiled. I think so. That's brilliant. Can you believe we've been streaming for an hour?
Wow.
I could be here all day.
In a good company, Joe, time flies.
Yeah.
So-
Well, that's just a bit chatterbox. That's all. I
No,
apologize.
it's great. So I suppose my question is, what do you have anything that you can talk to us about? What's next for you? I know that you've got a trip planned. I think it's next year.
Yeah, next year is actually looking to be quite busy. We have several trips lined up. We're doing a couple of destination workshops, Norway, and then that is full. Costa Rica is in the fall of next year, and so we're planning those, which is a big effort on the part of the studio. They're going to be wonderful experiences. I just, you have to plan ahead because I've already started my credentialing process for the Paris 24 games. We'll see how that goes. That is, and I can't really talk about that. But I hope to spend some time in Paris next year doing some preamble work.
Right.
So that could be kind of fun, for sure. We'll see where all that goes. And yeah, it's going to be, I mean, as a freelance photographer, I've been doing this a long time, almost entirely as a freelancer. January to me is always terrifying because it means like December, okay, fine, I made it through another year. Seriously. We used to have a big studio party prior to the pandemic that was a celebration of the fact that the whole studio made it through another year of freelance photography. And when I step out on that tightrope again on January, it's definitely a nervous time because I'm looking at like, okay, how are we going to make it again?
Yeah.
You
Another
know?
12 months ahead of you.
Yep. And you could say that's silly because, there's obviously years still to come and all of that. But I look at it on a year-to-year basis. Okay, how does this year look? How does it stack up? Are we in trouble? What do I have to do? You have to continuously adapt as a photographer. And so you look at that all the time and say, okay, all right, here we go. Here we go again. Let's start the carnival.
Yeah, exactly.
Show must go on.
Well, if any of our first of all, anyone who hasn't given the stream a like, please do before we wrap up here today. And a big thank you to Adrian and Randall, who I missed your contributions, but they were in there, and Paul, and that was everyone, I think. Yeah, I got everyone. That's great. So if people want to read, hear, see about any more of your exploits, obviously they can do so. If you stop sharing your screen for a second, then I'll make this as big as I can. There you go. That is the book that you need to ask for Christmas, everybody, as well as mine. But
I've got one as well.
Yeah.
Well, I got the one that first came out in January, I think.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it is I actually did a review of it in the upcoming Nick on Owner magazine. Those of you who've already subscribed to Nick on Owner may have seen a sneak peek of the front cover, but it does have one of Joe's images on there, and very exciting that is too. So you can, that's all good bookshops, I'm assuming, Joe, on this one they can get it from.
Yeah, Amazon, Barnes and Noble, that kind of thing. I appreciate the kind words. Yeah, it's a fun book. It definitely, there's learning in there, to be sure, but it's anecdotally based. It's not a by rote, kind of f-stop book. It's a bit more of an adventure.
No, it really is. Yeah, you take the reader on a ride with you, which I thoroughly enjoyed. And if anyone wants to take any classes with you, so the Costa Rica trip, does that have spaces on it if people wanted to sign up for that?
It does. You can go to my website, joemcnally.com, look at events. You can stop by my blog. I just wrote a new blog, actually. It's about Nikon Owner Magazine.
Yes, I've
and
seen that
one. And we also occasionally post some news on our Instagram account, which is Joe McNally Photo.
Excellent. Brilliant. Well, thank you so much. As I say, I could talk to you all afternoon quite happily. I have to say another thank you to Fred, and also I promised our viewers that there was a winner that would be picked for last week's competition, and I picked it before we went live because I couldn't contend with Zoom and doing it live. So Richard Angeloni, I don't know if you can see that.
Congratulations.
Congratulations. Going to send you a goodie bag. So if you could send your details over to us at media@grayswestminster.co.uk, then I can get your goodie bag in the post. Joe, it's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. I hope I wasn't overly irreverent.
No, not at all. It's been fascinating. After we finished, you have to go and have a look at all the chat comments, because so many people were had so much to say and nice things to say that I didn't get a chance to read them all out because I was completely compelled by your stories. So you'll have to go and check those out afterwards.
So that's on your YouTube channel. The comments will be there. Okay.
Yeah,
all right.
They will. The chat replay will be there. Folks, we'll see you next week. We will be doing another live stream, at least one more, if not two more, before Christmas.
We will try, yeah.
We're going to go for it. If it's not too cold, we might do a roaming one. But in the meantime, thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing your Friday afternoon with us, and we'll see you again very soon.
Enjoy your weekend. Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right, bye. Thank you.